Live from Waterford and Dungarvan, this is Waterford at 1 News.
Good afternoon, I'm Liz Reddy. Today's top stories. 8 stowaways found on board a tanker in Waterford port yesterday remain in Garda custody. Minister John Paul Whelan will discuss budget issues with councillors from Waterford in Leinster House later. Aldi's opened a new flagship Project Fresh store in Tramore today, creating 14 new jobs. And in sport, St Mary's gearing up for the biggest game in their history on Sunday afternoon. Fianna Fáil TD Mary Butler says yesterday's migrant discovery in Waterford highlights the need for improved measures to tackle people smuggling. 8 stowaways found on board a tanker in Waterford port yesterday remain in Garda custody. Immigration Gardaí are processing the 8 Albanian men who may be sent back to France on a ferry later. They'd stowed away on board the bulk carrier in the French port of Saint-Nazaire before it sailed to Bellevue in County Waterford, where it arrived at around 9 a.m. yesterday. Port officials alerted Gardaí, but before they arrived, 3 of the men had fled the ship but were apprehended a short time later. All 8 are already registered as migrants on European databases. The men are not asylum seekers and are being processed under immigration law. Deputy Butler was thankful that the men appear to be in good health.
But I suppose the reality of the situation is that we have seen a number of high-profile deaths in England this year as people place themselves at risk by travelling in the back of container ships. I was actually surprised because normally the focus is on the larger ports like Rosslare and Dublin, and as we know, 2 weeks ago 16 migrants were discovered in Rosslare. But I think yesterday's discovery puts a focus on the smaller ports, and I believe it highlights the need for improved measures to tackle people smuggling.
She says additional resources are needed.
I think translation supports are extremely important. Indeed, for those who are trafficked or who come into the country, as well as the Gardaí and the security response to deal with such incidents, because there is always going to be an issue around translation barriers. But I just believe that it highlights the need for improved measures to tackle people smuggling in the smaller ports. The larger ports like Rosslare and Dublin, they command the bulk of resources. But I believe yesterday's happenings, their discoveries, puts a huge emphasis on the fact that the smaller ports will need supports as well.
Minister John Paul Whelan will meet with councillors from Waterford in Leinster House later. The delegation's hoping to lobby the Minister of State for increased funding following the revaluation of Irish water rates. The local authority received an additional €2 million in recent weeks. However, they're still facing a €1.3 million deficit. Mayor John Pratt says they're working very hard in the background ahead of next week's budget meeting.
Obviously, our preferred option is to be working with a budget that doesn't have that deficit. And, the reality is that if we have the deficit, there is going to be some hurt out there, whether it be rates or whether it be dissolution of services. There's only certain places you can get the funding from. And we would prefer not to be in that position, and we would not have been in that position. If this 1.3 million or this full 3.3 million had been compensated like it had always been.
He says he wants to pass a budget.
I'm going to be in the Labour Party, want to pass a budget. So we will be doing everything in our power to ensure that we find a way to pass a budget next week, and that's my belief, and that's how I would. And I'm not going to be kind of telling untruths, because that's my preferred option. We want to pass a budget, but we want to pass a fair budget, and we want to be in a better position, because the reality is Waterford cannot afford this going forward. We cannot sustain this shortfall in the long term.
Waterford Council says it's going to carry out repair works to the paving in Dungarvan's Granton Square. It says it's not satisfied with the finished scheme, which was part of a €3.3 million redevelopment of the square. The local authority says it's currently liaising with both the contractor and designers involved and may consider taking legal action if it doesn't get a satisfactory response. Larry Bowe, General Manager of Lawlor's Hotel in Dungarvan, says the paving isn't safe.
The cobble locking that's on it looks like it's lifting in parts, and other parts is sinking, and I don't think it's the right impression that we want to give for Dungarvan when you're coming into the square. We're all trying to put our best foot forward on our frontage, and then when you just walk into the square, I think it's more of a health hazard than anything, and actually waiting for someone to take a tumble, and then maybe the council might do something about it.
Patricia Shallow of Shallow's newsagents on Grattan Square says there's other issues with the redevelopment.
The main problem with the contractors was that the county council trusted them and never consulted with the traders. We have too many crossings and people aren't happy with the shared space. The fact that we have no traffic lights at the end of Mary Street. People are afraid to drive, and a lot of the paving is coming up, even though we begged the council to tarmac that. They insisted on paving, and we were losing money the whole time. It went on for a year and a half, and people haven't come back.
2 of the 3 nurses at the cervical check service at University Hospital Waterford have resigned. All 15 of the doctors who oversee the running of the national service for women requiring further investigation following a smear test are considering resigning. This follows months of abuse directed at staff working in the 15 clinics nationwide after the cervical check controversy broke. Dr Noreen Russell, who's the lead with the Kerry service, told the Irish Examiner that some senior members of cervical check and the HSE were subjected to highly personalised abuse, which is thought to have played a part in the resignation of at least 2 key staff members. She said the anger arose because the public and members of the media initially wrongly believed that women had not been told by cervical check that they had cancer. In fact, the women knew they had cancer, but not that they were part of an audit. Aldi has opened a new flagship Project Fresh store in Tramore today, creating 14 new jobs. The store, located on the Strand Road, will be Aldi's 6th in County Waterford and has 112 free car parking spaces. It'll be powered by 100% green electricity. These customers have been very impressed with the new store.
Beautiful article, beautiful article. I can't go up the size of it. It's very big now, very big now, yeah.
I think it's fabulous, lovely, bright shop, and I'm delighted we have another choice in Tramore. Doors coming up.
I think it's lovely, much nicer than the other ones I've been in. Seems to be a new layout. We will. I've seen a few things now that are coming down the aisle there. I said I'll say to the wife when I get home.
There was a slight drop in the live register in Waterford in November. There were 6,465 people signing on in the city and county at the end of the month. That's a drop of 39 when compared to October, and a year-on-year fall of over 7%. November was the 3rd month in a row that the live register remained below 7,000. The Tramore Christmas Festival gets underway this afternoon at 5 p.m. Santa and the Fairy Snow Queen will turn on the Christmas lights. There'll be a parade, musical performances and a Christmas market. On Friday the 13th and 20th of December, there'll be a Fairy Snow Queen fancy dress parade on the main street, and that's in Tramore at 5 p.m.
WLR Sport.
And a very good afternoon, I'm Gavin Whelan. Starting with news of soccer, and Everton boss Marco Silva is on the verge of being sacked, which would make him the 5th Premier League manager so far this season. The Toffees were hammered 5-2 by Liverpool in the Merseyside derby last night, the result leaving them in the relegation zone with just 15 points from a possible 45. Meanwhile, the fairy tale return to Old Trafford for Jose Mourinho was not to be last night. His Tottenham team were beaten 2-1 by Manchester United, with Marcus Rashford scoring either side of half-time. The second coming from the penalty spot. Mourinho says they lacked intensity at the start of the game, which eventually cost them.
For 30 minutes, they were not just better than us, they were much better than us. The intensity, in the aggression, they were winning first balls, second balls, 50-50 duels.
With the result, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side goes 6th in the table. 2 games cross-channel in the Premier League tonight. Freddie Ljungberg will experience his first game as manager at the Emirates. Arsenal host Brighton at 8:15. Before that, Sheffield United host Newcastle at 7:30. Gaelic Games and St Mary's are gearing up for the biggest game in their club's history. On Sunday afternoon, they make the trip to Mallow to take on Corkside Russell Rovers in the Munster Junior Club Hurling Championship Final. The Tornina side, who are trained by former hurler of the year Dan Shanahan, have recorded wins over Castletown, Ballygran of Limerick and Tipperary champions Carrick Davins en route to the decider. Manager Declan Fitzpatrick says it's brilliant to be contesting a provincial final.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody has got behind us so far. And look, somebody said that we'd be in a Munster final in the month of December. Somebody had told us that last January. Look, I suppose we'll be absolutely over the moon. Look, it's been tough year enough, like really and truly. All the games were tough and competitive. Several teams pushed us very close, So look, we are where we are. it looks like it's going to be a close game again on Sunday. That's what we think.
Throw in Mallow is at 1pm. Tomas McCarthy will have updates here on WLR. We'll further build up on our GA show and indeed on our On The Ball show on Saturday. There's a big local derby in the Munster post-primary schools under-19 B hurling championship this afternoon. It throws in at 2 o'clock in Fairfield. St Augustine's and CBS Dungarvan doing battle in that one. To news of rugby, in the IRFU's performance director David Nafora has published his findings into where Ireland's Rugby World Cup this year went wrong. It states that performance anxiety, a skills deficit, poor preparation and a failure to evolve were all reasons why Ireland failed yet again to get beyond a quarter-final. And in racing, an 8-race card is taking place throughout the afternoon up there in Clonmel. The Willie Mullins trained Rathvedden with Paul Townend on board is expected to go off the favourite in the feature race of the day. That's the Jim Strang and Sons Kilsheelan Hurdle. That's the latest on WLR. Our next bulletin is at 2.